Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to News Dose. Hope everybody had a great weekend, maybe enjoyed a game or two. But we do have a lot to get into for this busy Monday. Xbox is teasing a potential big game reveal for later this year. Very exciting stuff. You're going to want to stay tuned for all of that. But then, we're also going to talk about Nintendo because they responded to the Switch 2 game keycard situation. This is actually a rather amusing situation because this has been a very controversial decision from them, and it's starting to blow up in their face in ways that I don't think that they were expecting. First, though, I do want to thank my supporters on Patreon and on YouTube memberships. Thank you just so much for what you do, and you will receive this video through early access. Let's go get right into things, though, starting off with kind of a weird situation. Of course, a lot of people are currently enjoying Death Stranding 2, but there are some reports of concern going around because, unfortunately, there seems to be some kind of bug that's causing some PlayStation 5 consoles to overheat. Now, this doesn't appear to be a hardware issue. Rather, it seems to be some kind of problem with the game itself. Basically, what's happening here is that the common denominator is that when players open the in-game map, for whatever reason, the PlayStation 5 then kicks its fans into overdrive, in which leads to an overheating warning. Now, there's different theories about why this is happening. Some people believe that it's a possible memory leak, while others theorize that it could be related to the map having an unlocked frame rate, which could potentially cause its frame rate to skyrocket, which maybe, in return, could get the PlayStation 5 fans to react in an irregular way. Either which way, though, this is a legitimate problem. Some players have posted video proof online, so this is a legitimate issue. And, I mean, whatever the problem is, hopefully it gets fixed sooner rather than later. I mean, you don't want to have any kind of overheating issue. If you have been playing this game, though, let me hear it in the comments below. Have you been having the same problem? And if you have, which console are you using? Is it on the base PlayStation 5 or a PlayStation 5 Pro? Because I'm rather curious as to how widespread this issue is, and if it's more so linked to the base PS5, which is what I've mostly heard about online. Now, we also have another showcase set for later this week from Bandai Namco. It'll debut on July 2nd at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Go ahead and mark your calendar. And they're bringing a lot of games, including My Hero Academia, a deep dive into the next Digimon title set for later this year, which I'm actually very interested in that one. I'm a little bit disappointed that it'll be locked at 30 frames per second, but I mean, other than that, it looks really good. Like, maybe even possibly, potentially the best Digimon game ever. So I'm very curious to what they have to show for that game. Code Vein 2 will also be there. I know a lot of people are hopeful for that one. Then there's Blood of the Dawnwalker, Death Note, Everybody's Golf, Patapon 1+2 Replay, Little Nightmares 3, Shadow Labyrinth, and even Tekken 8. So, yeah, they're going to have a lot of stuff to show there. So if you are interested in an updated look for any of those games that I just mentioned, then you might want to go ahead and tune in. I mean, who knows? They might even have a surprise or two, and in fact, one of those surprises may have leaked a little bit early. A Switch 2 ESRB rating for Elden Ring was recently discovered online, so maybe a release date at their showcase. Either which way, though, sounds like a fun time. Oh, and I know there's always a lot of hopium that will eventually get a Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 remake. These are some of the most beloved Sonic games ever made, personally, I think for a good reason. I loved those games as a kid, specifically Sonic Adventure 2 on the Dreamcast. That was one of my favorites during that era, but unfortunately, a remake seems to be unlikely as of this moment. That's because the head of Team Sonic just said this during an interview when asked about a potential remake. I do hear that a lot. I really am appreciative for everyone who likes the Sonic Adventure series. But when I think about what it would take to kind of bring that game up to the standards and expectations of what the modern gaming audience would want, I think it would be about as much time and energy as it would to make a new title. Part of me is thinking maybe I should just make a brand new title, and that's why there's currently no plans. So on one side, he's not completely ruling it out for the future. Clearly, this is a game that has passed his mind in the past, but he does prefer his focus to be on a completely new title, and I think that's fair. While yes, I would love a remake, I'm also going to go ahead and point to the newer Sonic titles being pretty good. You know, I'd say there for a long time, Sonic wasn't exactly in a great place, but they've really turned things around this generation. Sonic Frontiers, was excellent. The movies are doing great, and even Sonic X Shadow Generations was another standout title for them. So they seem to be onto something here, and I'd say just let them cook. I mean, I'd love a remake of the first 2 games. If they want to do that, I'd be thrilled. But at the end of the day, as long as they continue the high quality of the last couple of releases, then I'm okay with that as well. There's really no wrong answer here, as long as they can, make a good game. Now, speaking of Sega, though, we do need to talk about this Nintendo Switch 2 game keycard situation. And you might be wondering how this is linked to Sega, but, well, it actually is in this case. Last week, we had talked about the speculation that Sonic Racing Crossworlds could potentially be included on its cartridge. And that's because the picture that they used in its reveal had a gray, transparent banner on the bottom, which is actually similar to Tears of Kingdom, which is, yes, included on its cartridge. So put 2 and 2 together, and yeah, you can see why fans were hopeful. But unfortunately, Sega has now muddied the waters yet again. According to Sega's customer support, it will be on a game keycard. Now, to be completely fair here, this is still not a confirmation. It's important to keep in mind that customer support doesn't always have the correct information on hand. So there's still reason for some hope, but this directly correlates with what's going on over at Nintendo. I think we've all seen the polarizing response online to game keycards from a fan's perspective. However, is that enough for Nintendo, and maybe even third-party companies in some situations like Sega here, to actually listen? Well, at the very least, consumers aren't the only ones pressuring Nintendo for a better solution. During a recent shareholders meeting, a shareholder actually called Nintendo out by reportedly calling game keycards a quote-unquote half-baked measure. Yeah, ouch. And then proceeded to ask them on whether or not these are linked to the poor sales of third-party games. Of course, we had recently discussed that third-party games outside of Cyberpunk has been selling below expectations. Funny enough, Cyberpunk being the one known third-party success on the Switch 2 is actually, included on its cartridge. Now, is that a coincidence? I mean, maybe, maybe not, but one thing that I do know is that Nintendo fans do gravitate to physical media more so than PlayStation and Xbox fans, especially over in places like Japan. So yes, there very much could be a link between the two. Nonetheless, though, Nintendo's president responded to this question by saying, the keycard does not contain the game content itself, but rather a key for activation. A download is required when playing for the first time. It was adopted because the internal storage capacity is larger than that of the Switch. We will make efforts to ensure that third-party software sells well. So, this is really just a typical PR response that tells us basically nothing that we don't already know. We all know the problem here, though. The problem that third-party companies are running into is that Nintendo is only offering a 64-gigabyte card, which is expensive and eats into their profits. That's why third-party companies are choosing the much cheaper option, the game keycards. But unfortunately for them, they're quickly learning that customers that like physical media just aren't really buying into this. So now there's really only 3 things that can happen here. One, and this would be the best solution, I think, for everybody involved, and that would be for Nintendo to offer more sizes. Now, I don't know if there's just some kind of problem that's keeping Nintendo from doing this. It's a little surprising that they've only started with the 64-gigabyte option, but hopefully they find a way to offer smaller and cheaper options, and the sooner the better here. Because option number 2 is that if third parties continue to struggle like they have been, well, then they might decide to skip the Switch 2 entirely in the future. And that'd be very unfortunate for Nintendo, it'd be very unfortunate for third-party companies, and for consumers alike. Now, the last option is for physical prices to go up. But that's really not ideal, not only for customers, but also for third-party companies. If their games are too expensive, well, then customers might still skip their games. So I think there's really only one viable option here, and that's for Nintendo to do something themselves. They need to offer more options. And the fact that shareholders are pointing that out to them, that's actually a really good sign here. Nintendo might ignore the words of us consumers, but on the other hand, they do want to appease their shareholders. So, yeah, now that we're both on the same page here, it's actually a pretty good sign. Okay, now one last thing before we go, though. Xbox, or in this case, Halo Studios, is teasing a reveal for later this year. Yeah, this was announced through a Halo Waypoint blog, in which you can read here. It says, over the past few weeks, there's been a fair amount of speculation about when and where more details might emerge about any of the multiple projects Halo Studios is actively working on. We don't usually comment on such matters, but this time we want to enter the chat and share a little more perspective for Halo fans who might be on the fence about whether to attend this year's event. Speculation is always fun, but if you want the official scoop on what Halo Studios has been working on, you won't want to miss this year's Halo World Championship. We really hope you'll join us in Seattle this October. So now the question really just kind of becomes, what exactly are they teasing here? And the fact that they teased it in this way, it does kind of make it sound like it's going to be a must-see project for Halo fans. Now, if that's true, then the popular belief here seems to be a remake for Halo 1 using Unreal Engine 5. Now, this has been in the rumor mill for several years, and it could actually potentially release next year as a part of Xbox's 25th anniversary. Phil Spencer, at their recent showcase, teased that 2026 will be a special year for Xbox that will bring back a classic that's been with them since the beginning. And yeah, that sounds a lot like Halo. In fact, if you start to think about it, it really seems like the perfect year to do a remake of their first and probably most important game ever made. They have a chance to bring back their 4 main pillars as a part of their 25th anniversary, being Halo, Gears, Forza, and Fable. I mean, we very well possibly could get a new entry for each one of those franchises in 2026, which is incredibly nostalgic and very exciting all at the same time. At the very least, though, we could get that official Halo news this October. Anyways, though, that's going to be it for this episode, but until next time, make sure to subscribe, ring that bell, and peace out.